Hi everyone. Today we are going to talk about data visualization and infographics and the value of using them as a tool for learning, but also using them as a tool for conveying information. So that you know, the human brain is really good at processing information if it comes in the form of a picture. We can get the gist of something. Lots and lots of data can be processed. Normally, the human brain uses about 10% of the brain to process information. But if something is presented visually, it's been known that the human brain can engage over 2/3 of your neurons, which is most of your brain. And so it just shows that there is a lot of engagement in brain activity when something is presented visually. So with that, I'm going to share with you a very famous early infographic, if you will, and it is of Menard's rendition of Napoleon's quest into, or conquest, I should say, into Moscow, which was actually a failure. What you're seeing on this chart is 6 types of information. Okay, so there's geography, and I'll explain what each thing is. So you have geography and time and temperature, directionality, and number of troops. So specifically, what you're looking at is the story of in 1812 when the Grand Army set out, Napoleon's Grand Army set out from Poland with a force of 422,000 men. And that is shown through the tan line that starts out on the left side of your screen, and that is starting out in Poland. And the width of the tan line is representing 422,000 men. I think it's 1 millimeter for every 10,000 soldiers. And as the Grand Army moved east, they had some small, combat, but really it was also the weather that affected a lot of deaths. And you can see as you move east, the size of the army is really dwindling. And by the time they reach Moscow, all the way on the right, ignore my dog, I'm sorry. By the time you get to Moscow, all the way on the right, they're down to 100,000 men. And now the black line is showing them, the army, retreating from Moscow back to Poland. And by that point, a lot of fighting was really done. And what you'll see is here, these lines right here are showing you the frigid temperatures, because now it's winter. Very bad idea to try and fight Russians in the wintertime. They're much better at Russian winters than anybody else. And so you can see that as they're going back to the west, there's nothing left. And by the time they return to Poland, they're down to 10,000 people. This is a huge loss. And, there is an expression, I think the river that they're referring to is here, but it's as the men tried to cross the Berezina River under heavy attack, the width of the black line halves. I think that's right. I guess this is maybe this river, or here, this river, when they're going back. And there's an expression, a French expression, that basically says c'est la Berezina, when it's used by the French when they're trying to explain a total disaster. So what's the point of this? The point of this is you just took in so much information. No, you don't know the specifics. You don't have all the stats and the figures and names of the soldiers, or names of every single town they passed, or all the supplies that they had on hand, or any of that. But you've taken in and processed the gist of the winter, the fighting, the directionality, the temperature, and all the things that went into why it was a failure and why they lost so many men. Again, visual really helps in understanding things. So this video, I'll attach the link to this video separately. I'm not going to play it right now, but this would be a good time once we go through this. Once we go through this slide, this would be a good time to switch to this slide. If not, you can just watch this video at the end of this presentation. You can then switch to the YouTube video that will be here. So what this is going to describe is over 200 years, 200 countries, and really just showing that over time, countries are doing better as far as the average lifespan is increasing and the average wealth, and they measure wealth up to $40,000 a year, which in many countries is considered wealthy and enough to sustain someone, maybe not completely comfortably, but to sustain people. What I want you to consider when you're watching this video is how much information, not only is it interesting, but how much information you're taking in. You're seeing things in different colors. You're seeing things in different sizes. You're seeing things move. He tells you at the end that he has, in plotting this, he has plotted 120,000 data points. So no, you're not, if you were given this in a spreadsheet, it wouldn't even make sense to you because you're not seeing the patterns. But because it's being presented to you visually, it's much easier for you to take in the full picture and to see patterns and trends and whatnot. And if we just go through these 4 bullet points really quickly, as I was just saying, human visual processing is efficient in detecting changes and making comparisons between quantities, sizes, shapes, variations in lightness. When properties of symbolic data are mapped to a few visual properties. So I take a lot of information and I narrow it down to a few pieces of information. I'm able to really make sense of a lot of data that way. Again, it is estimated that 2/3 of the brain's neurons are involved in visual processing, and proper visualization provides a different approach to potential connections, relationships, which are not as obvious in non-visualized quantitative data. Quantitative meaning having to do with numbers. An infographic is, and we'll talk about the formal definition, but an infographic is essentially a poster that is going to present information in such a way that you could like take a quick glance at it and take in a lot of information at once. So again, you're really focusing on color, size of information, pictures. Okay, so information graphics or infographics are graphic visual representations of information, data, or knowledge intended to present information quickly and clearly. They can improve cognition, which means thinking, by utilizing graphics to enhance the human visual system's ability to see patterns and trends. You're not looking to summarize things on an infographic with words. Can you have words? Yes. A lot of words? No. Okay, what makes a good infographic? You want it to be focused, relevant, credible. You want clear design, limited colors. I wouldn't make an infographic with more than 4 colors. More than that, then it's too much for the human brain to process. Convey the message at a glance. Make sure that the data and the graphics match. You should have a clear title, right? Or thesis statement, right? Shareable story, tell a meaningful story. A good infographic starts with a good why question, answering an interesting question to grab your audience. Use as little text as possible in a clear font. If your infographic is accompanied by 1,000 words of text, you've missed the point of the infographic. So I'm not sure whether your teacher is going to require you to do what I've done with my class, but what I've done with my class is as kind of an assignment before going into an actual project is I just have My students check out Canva, Pictochart, and Easily, and then on anything that they choose to do, it could be ice cream, it could be potatoes, soccer, coronavirus, whatever, 5 facts, 1 image, 1 chart, and it should be cited. And your teachers can decide if they want to do this or not. But the thing that I really want to point out is, let me just go back. The thing I want to point out is, if you're making a sentence on your infographic, hold on one second. Sorry about that. So if you were writing a sentence, say, on any one of these platforms, and you wanted, I'm making these numbers up, but you were talking about teenage sleep patterns, and the statistic was 40% of teenagers don't report not getting enough sleep. Now, these platforms don't work in the same way that you would just pull a text box down and that would be in one text box. You would have to think about, what do you want in that sentence to stand out? So what would be the words or the numbers? And if you're thinking of quantitative data, the 40%, right? You might want that to be in a different color. So you might have that larger and in red. Of would be back to a smaller font. Teenagers, that might be in red too, and might be, larger, but all of these have to be in different text boxes, because in these platforms, when you switch font size or font color, again, it requires different text boxes. So for purposes of an infographic, you want to keep your information to things that are quantitative in nature. Okay, and so now what I want to point out to you is, I want to show you a good infographic. It's about soccer, and if you are going to have a test run at making an infographic, it could be, you can have an infographic on anything. But here you have a map. You have parts of the field explained. There are icons. There are symbols for each thing that they want to tell you about. So symbols for how you win the game, penalties, right? Here are stats. So every single infographic platform has a graphing tool, which is great because, as you can see, there's a graph here, a graph here, a graph here, all over here, and they're obviously made with the graphing tool of either Pictochart, Easily, or Canva, because the colors are all matching. It's clear that whoever made this infographic didn't go and cut and paste the graph from something else. Okay, so I'm going to stop here. I will attach Pictochart, Easily, and Canva, so you could explore which infographic platform you like the most. But this is hopefully a good introduction for you to see how just another way you can either process information or you can present information. And just so you know, when you are in a class, if you have a teacher who lectures a lot and you feel that you're missing an understanding of something that they're explaining, there is always a 2-minute YouTube video or an infographic even on that topic. And just know that you might have a much better ability to understand a topic if you go and find a 2-minute video on it, or if you go and look for an infographic or something visually to just kind of give you an overall sense of the content. Okay, I hope this helped. Thanks.